Well, so much for free speech, people. You know, Beyonce's received a whole load of backlash since performing at Super Bowl 50, where she had a bunch of dancers with afros and all black outfits come out and they formed an X, for Malcolm X and whatnot. And they were doing kind of like a Black Lives Matter type of thing and whatnot. A lot of people were really pissed. These white supremacists are really tripping. So I'm going to read to you what citynews.ca, which is a Canadian website, had to write about it. They said, and I quote, Beyonce's recently announced concert appearances in Toronto this May might not happen if one Toronto councillor has his way. Ward 39 councillor, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, Jim Karygiannis, has called on the federal government to investigate the pop diva following her recent Super Bowl 50 halftime performance, which critics dubbed pro-Black Panther and anti-cop. While Karygiannis wouldn't ban Beyonce based on the performance alone, he said if an inquiry found she or her backup dancers had supported the Black Panthers financially, they could be blocked from entering the country. Quote, perhaps Immigration Minister John McCollum should have her investigated first, the former federal MP tells the Toronto Sun. Quote, if someone wore bullets and supported a radical group here, they would not be welcome in the United States. That's for sure. End quote. Quote, we should not be promoting gun culture or anti-police sentiments. End quote. Fellow councillor Giorgio, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, Mamaliti agrees that her performance was, quote, distasteful and that her subtle message wasn't all that subtle. Beyonce is scheduled to bring her Formation World Tour to the Rogers Center on May 25th. She is also scheduled to play Edmonton's Commonwealth Stadium on May 20th. The councilor's condemnation of Beyonce's performance echoes similar remarks from south of the border. Republican Congressman Peter King of New York said on Facebook, quote, her pro-Black Panther and anti-cop video Formation and her Super Bowl performance is just one more example of how acceptable it has become to be anti-police, end quote. Former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani called it, quote, outrageous, saying she, quote, used it as a platform to attack police officers who are the people who protect her and protect us and keep us alive, end quote. The 71-year-old Giuliani said the whole halftime show was, quote, ridiculous, adding he would have preferred, quote, decent, wholesome entertainment. Yeah, Giuliani, you mean like black people being shot, murdered, dead in the streets. That's wholesome entertainment to a terrorist thug like you. Look this up. Rudolph Giuliani, Donald Trump, drag kiss. Yeah, you remember that video? Rudolph Giuliani dressed up in drag and kissed Donald Trump. Remember that video? But anyways, that's none of my business. Back to the story. Beyonce hasn't commented on the specifics of her performance, while her rep also declined comment. The NFL has also been silent on the matter. During the performance, viewed by an estimated 112 million people, Beyonce's dancers donned berets, sported afros, and wore all black, similar to the style of the Black Panther Party. At one point during their routine, the dancers formed an X on the field, which some people are taking as a tribute to slain black activist Malcolm X. End quote. So there you go. Even in Canada, they're hating on Beyonce over this performance, and they're trying to, if possible, find some sort of way to ban her from going to freaking Canada to perform, which brings revenue to Canada. But they're basically saying that the biggest musician in the world, money is not good enough for them there because of a performance at a football game. Can we say petty? These people are supposed to be adults and they're supposed to be professionals. We're talking about a counselor. Could you imagine all of the things that he's been accused of in his career? Could you imagine all of the things that he's been connected to? I want to know what his record is, what his background is, because you can't tell me that no quote unquote black person has never popped up dead under his watch. I wouldn't be surprised if they have a Flint water type of crisis that's happened under his watch as well. You got to understand something. Anybody with that type of mentality that will get this upset over a ridiculous halftime show at a football game, that type of negative energy, that type of negative mind state doesn't just come out of the indigo blue. He didn't just start feeling this way about black people, so-called black people, overnight. You know, this is something that he had to have carried with him for many, many years now. And this man is pure evil. Anybody who just sits around wanting to attack a race of people like this, because you got to understand something. When we protest out of people being killed and stuff like that. When we riot, it's because somebody got killed and a police officer wasn't charged and whatnot. When they do what they do, it's just because they just merely didn't get their way. These people are big babies. These white supremacists, hell, they were just rioting when the Denver Broncos ended up winning the game. You know, that's all over there on the internet. People are posting it, but the major news outlets have caused a blackout on the fact that once again, a sports game happened and white folks were rioting. And it happens all of the time. When I say it happens all of the time, I mean even at college games, not just at the NFL or the NBA games. They go and they turn over cars and they set shit on fire and whatnot. And I've done stories like this before, like on my other channel, which I'm going to have to start doing more of these, talking about these riots and different things that these people were behind, because the mainstream media completely ignores it because they're like, well, it's not black people doing it, so why would we talk about it? They think they're slick. You know, this man needs to be investigated. That's all I know. If he's going to be that petty over a stupid Super Bowl halftime performance. But they're really starting to come out now. These white supremacists, if you notice, they're really rearing their ugly heads. And you know what it's time to do? It's time to start playing whack-a-mole. Remember that arcade game when they rear their ugly head, just bop them on top of their head? It's time for us to start smiting them. Not physically, mentally, spiritually, and emotionally. It's time for us to start getting these people kicked out of the positions that they're in so that they can't continue to do the damage that they're doing. They're claiming that this was an attack on police officers because they're always attacking us. They're just reflecting. The only thing that they're doing is telling us what they've been doing to us and claiming that we're doing it to them. And not because of white guilt, but because it's a defense tactic. And you got to understand something. You know, they say to fight a fire, you have to bring water to extinguish the flames, or you bring a bulletproof vest to a bullet to stop the bullet. They're not trying to stop the alleged attack on them. They're attempting to throw fuel on the fire. They only want things to get worse. They only want things to intensify. That's why they say stupid things like, oh, Beyonce's causing this racial divide. They know good and well that Beyonce's not causing a racial divide. They want a racial divide, but they want for so-called black people to be blamed for it. So watch out for the tactics. Whatever they're saying, quote, we're doing is what they're actually doing. They tell you their game plan every time they accuse you of anything. Any accusation is an explanation. So just remember that. But anyways, let me know what you think about it all below. Be sure to subscribe to the Meat Magazine YouTube channels. Visit meatmagazine.blogspot.com. Follow me on Twitter @meatmagazine.